This week on Quality Digest Live, we'll chat with a high school principal who's taking STEM education to a whole new level.
Plus, do you know the difference between micromanaging and good coaching? We'll provide the answer to those questions when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for September 21st, 2012. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. Well, NIST has unveiled a new laboratory, and this one looks remarkably like a 2,700 square foot, two-story, four-bedroom, three-bed house.
Amazing.
You know why?
Why?
Because it is a 2,700 square foot, two-story, four-bedroom, three-bath house. And yes, that's exactly what it is. And it's called a Net Zero Energy Residential Test Facility. The house is designed by NIST to demonstrate that a typical suburban home for a family of four can generate as much energy as it uses in a year. So the house looks and behaves like an actual house. And I think we've got an image of it here that we can run for you.
No, we ran already.
Oh, did we already run that? Okay, well,
yes, we did.
There we go. So run it again. The house looks and behaves like an actual house and has been built to the U.S. Green Building Council LEED Platinum standards. And the thing that's interesting is it uses all off-the-shelf energy-efficient construction and appliances, as well as other energy-generating technologies like solar water heating, solar voltaic, photovoltaic systems, and geothermal heating and cooling. So for the first year of operation, the lab will be used to demonstrate net zero energy uses. Basically, what they're looking for is that over the course of a year, the amount of energy that is going into the house through alternative energy sources is at least equal to the amount of energy being used and coming off the grid. So as far as the grid's concerned, there should be net use at the end of 1 year. So NIST researchers will use computer software and mechanical controls to simulate the activities of a family of four. So no actual humans will be allowed to enter the house during this year.
No humans were harmed in the making of this house.
No humans were harmed in the making of this house. Now the thing that's interesting though is that the house is completely computer controlled, so lights are going to turn on at specified times, hot water, showers, washing machines, kitchen appliances, everything. In other words, the house and all its appliances will behave just like a real house. And the purpose for this is to get away from the lab environment where you normally do this testing. NIST wanted kind of a real world scenario to test out not only the house, energy efficient house, but also the appliances as well. So this is going to look at the whole house and its appliances as a whole. But you're probably saying this, you were probably thinking this, weren't you?
Sure.
It's not really working like a real house because there's no humans. And we all know that humans contribute to, the energy input into a house just because most of us, living and breathing.
Hopefully.
But NIST thought of this. So what they've done is they've created these little devices that emit heat and humidity just like a human being would. So it's just like humans, but they don't actually do anything. They just sit there and radiate heat and moisture. So I was talking to my wife last night, and I was telling her about this story. And I knew she was just straining. So you're telling me that there's this device that just sits there on the couch and emits heat and moisture. Oh, that's really interesting, Dirk.
Right.
Can't relate to that at all.
I have some friends like that. I was going to say, I think that this house kind of sounds like The Shining to me a little bit. It's like it does everything for you, except have real people in it. But it's fine, I guess. It is, in all honesty, it is pretty amazing that they've thought of all these things to simulate the actual, because it's a lab. It really is a lab in the field, to simulate the actual behaviors so that they can get good data.
The other thing that's kind of cool is that there was no specialty. I mean, other than monitoring equipment, there's no specialty equipment. This is all off-the-shelf, energy-efficient appliances and heaters, and your standard photovoltaic system and geothermal and solar heating type thing going on. So there's nothing that NIST put in there that any of us couldn't do. It's just all put into one house, and the entire house is built from the ground up to be energy efficient. So it'll be interesting to see what they come out at the end of the year, whether they hit their target goal of it really being a net zero residence. So
well, they're going to learn a lot from it.
It's a beautiful house.
It is a beautiful house. I was going to say, gosh, I'd like to move in there.
Shoot.
Looks like
I can sit on a couch and emit heat and immunity. And
yeah,
do nothing.
you do it. You do it right now. I mean, you're doing it right now. So that's great.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Dirk. Okay. Also in the news this week, Knowledge at Wharton recently conducted an interview with Pascal Lamy, Director General of the World Trade Organization. This discussion uncovered some of the drivers behind the vast changes and increasing complexity occurring within the global economic infrastructure. Of course, this is a hugely complex system that is still emerging from the prior era, which was ruled by quotas and tariffs. The emergence of global supply chains, not to mention the internet, has swept away that system, and what has replaced it is a looser framework of checks and balances. So it's not quite the Wild West, but without question, pure market forces play a bigger role now than they ever have before. The financial crisis, well, I mean, really the crises that the global economy has suffered since 2008 is both an indictment as well as an example of the interlocking nature of the current system. After all, the ongoing economic meltdown started with the bursting of the U.S. housing bubble in 2007, which consequently dragged down some long-standing financial institutions, which caused a dearth of liquidity in the markets, which, given the interreliance again of the global system, spread like wildfire throughout the rest of the world economy. It's one of those for want of a nail kind of situations, right? I mean, one thing leads to another, and that's what we're talking about here. Is this is a one world economy where everything's interrelated. So, sure. There was so much paper held by so many large financial institutions in the U.S. housing market. We know the whole story of the subprime crisis. But it spread throughout every corner, every financial market of the world, and this is exactly what Lamy is talking about here. So in this wide-ranging interview, Lamy touches on all these issues and more, mostly within the context of the emerging regulatory environment that now focuses on risk and the protection of consumers as opposed to the protection of organizations. Very key point. The world we're in now, the economic structure we're in now, focuses on risk and the protection of consumers, not the protection of companies. Tariffs really are no longer. There are backdoor kind of tariffs, and there are still tariffs that are going on, but it's much more focused on protecting customers and safety and risk than it is on just making sure that markets are protected for these organizations, right? So Lamy also highlights the conflict between trade integration and political realities. Another really interesting thing. As an example, he points to the Asian markets and the various trade agreements that are in effect within that sphere, some of which include China and some of which, very pointedly, do not. Again, trade integration, very key issue, and all these nations want and need integration at a certain level, but there's also political realities. And when the United States is involved in some of these agreements in Asia, China may or may not be involved, depending on what that agreement may deal with. This is a really, again, as I mentioned, a very huge, very complex issue. To find out more about the complexities of international trade, including Wharton's interview with Pascal Lamy, please click on the story link just below the player page right here and read it. It's a rather lengthy piece. It's actually an edited version of the interview, so the interview itself was much longer. But if you're into macroeconomics, and I am a little bit, not much. Really, really interesting stuff, and you can delve into that, I think, a little bit through looking at this interview and then maybe doing some of your own research.
Wharton is, if you want to read a lot of very interesting articles across a wide range of topics, Knowledge at Wharton, the website, has really some great interviews. We kind of cherry pick some that are relevant to our audience
in some way, yeah.
But if you're interested in business in general, and particularly from very often from an international perspective, the Wharton website is really good. I just really encourage all of you, if you're really into this kind of stuff, it's a fascinating.
So again, check it out right below the player page. There's a link. You can check it out, read the interview, and then go to Knowledge at Wharton from there.
Yep. Well, I'm excited about our next guest via Skype on the show. If any of you watched last week's show, you know that I talked about what I feel is just a really innovative and encouraging program at Wheeling High School in Wheeling, Illinois. It's a program that's intent is to drive both interest and provide manufacturing job skills to high school students. And what I was really intrigued by this story, and I really wanted just to get this next guest, this man, on our show to tell us more about what's going on at Wheeling. And we're going to have with us right now Principal Lazaro Lopez of Wheeling High School. And by the way, just to set this up a little bit before, 1 second, sorry. I did want to set this up a little bit. I ran across Principal Lopez at a Society of Manufacturing Engineers press conference at IMTS, and I was just so intrigued with what he was talking about and his passion for the students at Wheeling High School that I just had to bring him on the show. So, Principal Lopez, thanks for coming on our show.
Well, thank you, Dirk and Mike, for having me. I certainly appreciate it.
And before we get into kind of the manufacturing side of things and what you're doing in terms of your advanced manufacturing program at Wheeling, I wanted you to set up a little bit. This is actually part of a larger program, right? You have something called the Career Pathways?
Yeah, and I appreciate you referencing that. Really, it's about transforming high school into an experience that's engaging and relevant to our students today. So it's about a student beginning the rest of their lives the moment they walk in our doors and choosing a career pathway and then developing each pathway, just like we've done with manufacturing, with courses that lead beyond high school, industry standard certifications that are recognized, so their credentials before they leave high school, as well as external real-world experiences with many partners.
And so what I want you to focus on right now is tell us, because this is probably most apropos to our audience, is your advanced manufacturing program. And tell us a little bit about that and kind of something that's unique about it is actually your lab.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you back in 2008, when I started talking about investing in an on-site manufacturing facility at our school, many people looked at me in the area, and other educators would say, "Why are you spending money on an industry that's dead, where there are no jobs?" And I knew that in our community, I met manufacturers from across the state that would tell me, we don't have enough skilled workers. We don't have individuals that are interested in entering manufacturing. And so I was being responsive to our community. We have a large number of manufacturers in this area that are small to mid-sized manufacturers, as well as some large ones. And so we invested in a high-quality facility. I say it's $1 million manufacturing facility. I would say I didn't spend $1 million on it, but we had certainly about 26 partners, and certainly with the support of the SME Education Foundation and SME and lots of other manufacturers from this area, helped us design a space where we have a CNC lathes and mills, as well as a plasma cutter, welding booth.
We're having a little bit of a problem there.
Having a little bit of problem with
prototype. There we go. And your viewers can certainly check out our website and look at some photographs of the space.
We lost you just there for a second, Dr. Lopez. But I believe what you're saying is you've got this lab that's basically fully outfitted with
Yes.
Pretty much anything a modern machine shop would have, CNCs, and I'm assuming inspection equipment and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. And my hope is that we're going to expand it with micro manufacturing next year. And also, I'm looking at perhaps a FANUC robot to add. Anything that gives the kids a real connection with the equipment so that they can see it and feel it and get excited about the industry.
Well, that's what one of the things I think the entire at the entire press conference at the SME press conference, I think the thing that just excited everybody is you gave an example of a couple of students. And I think even one student, you said that you didn't, if I remember right, you said you didn't feel would have finished high school until they saw what was going on with this program. Is that right?
Yes, and I'd be glad to share the story. I can tell you there's dozens of students who are already working full-time in the industry because of our program, but two specific ones are students that were at risk, likely would not have graduated, at least one of them. And because of the manufacturing program, they got excited about school. They saw a future. We got them with one of our business partners here in the community, one of our manufacturing partners, and they worked as an internship, and now both of them are in the industry working full time, and they credit their lives turning around really to this program and to being in this manufacturing course. And what I would add, what's unique about ours is high school students are earning NIM certification as well as MSSC and dual college credit before they graduate high school.
Now tell us a little bit about those certifications. Those are industry certifications, right?
Yes, and what I will tell you, Dirk, is that this isn't my area of expertise. I'm an English guy and an educator, but I'm being responsive to the business community. But what I can tell you is, what I am told is the MSSC, all the safety certifications that I know are adopted through NAM, National Association of Manufacturing, as well as the NIM certification. Those were what my industry partners said. Hey, if you can get the kids the skill sets, then we'll be excited to bring them in and look at career opportunities.
Now, another thing that was, at least it was attractive to me, is this program actually kind of came full circle, right? You had a student that went through your program, got placed in a machine shop there, and then later on actually ended up, mentoring another student from your program? Do we lose him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because you got into it pretty deep in the last week's show. You talked about some of these issues.
Well, let me tell you this one story, and I'll tell it while we try to get Dr. Lopez back on. The Skype connection isn't all that great, but. So I believe what the story was is, as he mentioned, he had several students go through this program. Mm-hmm. Then they were, one of them in particular was placed at a machine shop. Mm-hmm. And like a year or so later, another student went through the program, ended up being interning at the same machine shop and working with the previous student that had already gone through the program. So the program was almost perpetuating itself, where one student is now working and now actually mentoring another student through the same program. And this is all at the high school level, and this is what's mind-blowing. Yeah. Now, another thing, do we have him back yet, Chris? Okay. And hopefully we'll get Dr. Lopez back on the show. I'll just try to recap. Fortunately, we talked about this before the program. Another thing that was very interesting is that initially, I believe, he said that there wasn't a lot of support from the community in terms of a manufacturing program, because kind of the idea was that manufacturing was not dead, but it's all going overseas. Sure. Why should our kids be going into something that's, quote, failing? Mm-hmm. You know, they should be going on the other career pathways, because there's several career pathways at Wheeling. So you've got, he mentioned their medical career pathways. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that was probably more attractive to some parents. And he, at least to my perspective, and I wish he was on here so he could tell me whether I'm right or not, my perspective was that he actually kind of bucked the system. Mm-hmm. He said, no, I believe this is important, manufacturing is important, kind of, if we build it, they will come. Well, right? And he built it, and they came, and now he's placing them, so.
Well, and there we are.
There we go.
Hi, sorry about that.
Hey, no problem. I want to make sure I got this right. I'm not sure if you heard any of this, but I believe you told me earlier that you met actually some resistance in putting up your advanced manufacturing program that was kind of like, gee, you know, do I really want my kids going into manufacturing?
No, absolutely. And what I will tell you is that we embedded it directly with the engineering program. And so we have students that are really pursuing both engineering and manufacturing, and really providing all of the avenues there for them to choose which route they want to go. But today's advanced manufacturing requires a very high level of skill. And there are what I would say, access to the middle class by going that route. So I've connected both, but certainly some pushback or certainly individuals that have an old view of manufacturing, what it used to be.
Now, another thing, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, given that you're a principal, but one thing that was really interesting to me is you had students who probably, I'm reading between the lines maybe here a little bit, may not have gone on to college, may not in fact have finished high school. And so college wasn't a career choice from, or it wasn't a choice from them, that either because they had no interest in it or maybe couldn't afford it, or family issues or whatever. And yet when a vocational route was presented to them, that here's something that they could have an interest in, being a machinist, and go basically into the workforce from high school, they kind of jumped on it. And to me, at least in the United States, that kind of seems contrary to what we're normally taught growing up as you go to high school, you go to college?
Well, here's the way I would frame it. I would say that I want to prepare students for every opportunity possible. And a student that graduates from high school should be ready to go to college, go to work, perhaps go get a credential or certification, come back to college. And even today's manufacturer, I mean, some of the students that have graduated that went straight into work are still continuing their education through through Harper Community College, trying to earn an associate's degree related to manufacturing. So what I would say is that we really don't, my goal isn't necessarily to choose for the students, but to prepare them for every possible option. And yes, there are students that want to be able to go to work, and maybe they'll go to work for a few years. I can tell you, I didn't finish college till I was much older. I didn't go straight into college. I went in the military first and spent 6 years in the Army before I even thought about going back to college. And so those are all options. None of them are bad. But what I would like is when a student graduates from high school that they leave with more than just a diploma, that they have a credential, that they have something that helps them be more marketable in the world so they have access to a career.
Well, Dr. Lopez, really, I really appreciate you being on the show. I wish we had more time, but we have to get going here. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I'd say just keep up the good work, and hopefully we're going to be able to spread the word a little bit ourselves with our interview here with you. And Ashley, we're talking to SME about some of the things that maybe we might be able to contribute with in some way. So congratulations, and I think you have a great program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Thank you, Dr. Lopez. Great stuff. And this, apologize again to everyone out there. We had
some Skype problems.
Little Skype problems. It happens. It's live television, you know.
There you go.
Ed Sullivan had those kind of things back in the 50s.
Yeah.
With Skype and whatever. Yeah,
yes, Skype not working.
Yeah, but it was, yeah, you're right, Derek. I think that this is something that we here at Quality Digest want to continue to support. Hopefully working more with SME going forward, and I think that I think it's important. We talk about STEM education. We talk about kids and young adults and options, and I think that's exactly what the Principal Lopez was talking about.
We're talking about coaching.
Yeah, well, let's talk about coaching. This is a great segue, Derek. Thank you. We had a piece that appeared actually in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily by a new contributor of ours by the name of Nathan Jamel, and the article was entitled "Micromanaging versus Coaching," of course, as you mentioned right there.
Micromanaging is such a bad term.
It's such a bad term, but it's not. And well, it might be. But the article talks about the fact that it doesn't have to be. Micromanaging, of course, has this connotation of being bad managers micromanage, supposedly. People that go in and they have to do the work for their employees because for whatever reason, maybe they didn't train them properly or they made a bad hire or whatever. It's a failing that is common, oftentimes nailed to a manager, that you're a micromanager. It's a bad thing. Well, let's start by looking at really what managing is versus what coaching is. And this is where Nathan began his article, and I want to talk about it as well. Managing really is about setting expectations and holding employees accountable. And it's really an ongoing thing. It's never ending. You do that all the time. And it's really very team-based. You know, you hold people accountable within the framework of the team, within the framework of the larger organization. Now, coaching is really much more individual based. It's much more hands-on, it's much more active, and it's much more short-term. Very, very key. As a matter of fact, in this piece, Nathan advises that you should not do micromanaging, that intensive coaching, for more than 90 days. 90 days is the limit in which he assigns to that, and that could be flexible, but seems like it makes some sense. So micromanaging is a tactic of coaching, not a leadership style. Micromanaging is a tactic of coaching, not a leadership style. So when he says that, he's really bringing in both connotations here. You don't want to be a micromanager, but from the perspective of being a coach, sometimes you need to micromanage. It's a tactic, not a style, not an ongoing style. And that idea that you're going to do it in short term, I think, is really, really important, because there are situations where you need to micromanage. You just have to. Not every team member is going to be a perfect fit for every team and for every job. And now, what you do when you do that, when you go in and you coach somebody and you micromanage them, is you don't do their work for them, but you stay very close to the knitting of what they're doing. You understand very deeply what they're doing every day with their work, and you help them. You coach them through it. And there may be some outcomes from that aren't particularly pleasant sometimes. Right. You may find that when you do that, gosh, maybe this person isn't a good fit. Maybe he or she was hired. Maybe we didn't get a good perspective on who that person really was. whatever the case may be, you may have to go down a termination path. It happens. But the key thing here is that even that is not necessarily a bad thing. Many times, an employee is let go and they find a much better job. You don't want to let an employee go if there's a potential that they can do the work with the proper, again, coaching and micromanaging. But if you find that it's just a bad fit, it's really not what they're good at, they don't want to do it, their attitude's not great, their productivity isn't great, well, sometimes you may have to let them go. Now, not all leaders can coach properly. That's the fact of the matter. And why is that? Well, I think, and the author here thinks that fear has something to do with this. There's a fear of confrontation in many of us, many people, even very good managers, even good leaders have a fear of confrontation. And it stems from the mistaken assumption that a confrontation is going to be bad, or hard, or difficult, awkward, whatever, uncomfortable for all involved. Right. And sometimes they are, and sometimes maybe they do have to be, but you really can reframe that. A calm, controlled, focused confrontation actually, if you think about it, can actually be a plan for success. If you have an employee who is new to your team perhaps, and he or she isn't really clicking in right, and you confront them about it, not in an aggressive way, but controlled, professionally, say, hey, we need to discuss this. And you establish an action plan. Many times that employee is going to thank you for that. It's going to help them get to maybe some issues that they have that they're afraid to raise themselves.
Or structure.
Or structure, whatever they may need. And most times you're able to, through that effort, get them straightened out, get them to understand better what the expectations are, and get them to understand better how what they do is going to help the team and help the organization. Yes, you may have to micromanage them. You may have to devote maybe even the full 90 days, but isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth it if you have an employee with talent? You hired him for some reason. You saw something there.
Right.
So if you can bring that out through micromanaging for a short period of time, and then go back to a more traditional management style, isn't that worth it? Doesn't that make sense? Rather than, again, the stigma of micromanaging. You're a micromanager. Well, again, it's not being a micromanager. It's micromanaging in small chunks with individual people.
And I think it's all about approach too.
Yes.
Does the employee understand that they're being coached in the short term as opposed to being managed? And I realize there's probably a fine line between the two, and there's probably a lot of crossing back and forth over it. But I think, and it's going to take a lot of work on the manager's part too. The manager has to know also when to let go. I mean, and I think that's one problem is you get used to micromanaging, either whether you're micromanaging a person or micromanaging a department, which would be wrong. It's hard to know. Okay, can I let go? Can I let go? Is it safe? Is it safe? Right. And I think the same thing with an employee. If you're coaching them, when do you set them free?
Well, I think if a manager, if a leader is asking the questions, he or she's on the right path. Yeah. It's a deeper issue if you're not aware of it. And I think that's what an article like this, and again, the piece was from Nathan Jamal, Micromanaging versus Coaching. It appeared in Wednesday's issue of QDD. So I think that understanding that it's an issue, and an article like this helps that, is really the first thing. And if you're asking those questions, say, well, when do I let go? How much do I do? Then you're probably doing okay. It's when you think, I'm not a micromanager, and I'm not doing that, and I would never do that, well, maybe ask your employees, maybe ask your team members if you are, and they'll probably give you a better perspective on it. We like these kind of articles. They really deal with important quality issues of how you get your people aligned and how you fire up your team.
Management is a big part of quality.
Sure.
I mean, in the end, it's your employees who are doing the work.
Yep.
It's employees who are responsible for your quality, and the work environment is in large part predicated on the type of management that's going on. So all of these little hints and tips that we bring to you, we hope are really useful. Well, speaking of quality departments,
that's right.
I'll bet most of you would like to know how to turn your quality department from being a cost center into a cost savings center. Very often, particularly from a management point of view, the quality department is looked at as a cost center. It's where we're spending money. It's not where we go to save money. Those of us who work in the quality field know that's not true, but sometimes communicating that is difficult, and also sometimes having the right tool to turn it from a cost center to a cost saving center is really important. So a lot of this deals on tools. that deal with your records, particularly if you have paper records. And this is going to be the subject of an upcoming webinar that Quality Digest is hosting next week. And here to talk about this particular issue is Dean Antonakis, CEO of Unipoint. Hello, Dean.
Hi, Derek. Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me today.
Hey, sure.
How are you, Dean?
Tell us, when typically we think of the quality department, as I just mentioned, we look at it as a cost center versus cost saving center. What does that mean to you?
Sure. Well, like you were just talking about with micromanagement, it all comes down to the management of your quality records. And what our tool offers, and we have over 1,000 customers using it throughout North America, is a way for your quality department to micromanage your quality events. And micromanage those events, not just in terms of the frequency of your quality, scrap, rework, non-conformances, corrective actions, but also manage the cost, the total administrative cost. So as these events unfold, and as we manage the life cycle of each event, so for instance, a non-conformance is originated, investigated, there's a disposition, it's completed, it's closed. We put every record through a life cycle. And we cost every stage. We spent an hour on the origination, we spent a half an hour on the investigation. And we're tracking even salaried people that are posting time against these records. So not just the cost of scrap and rework, but the cost of your quality manager's time, your plant manager's time, everyone's time in the mix. And at the end of the day, we can spit out to you the output. We can show you this is how many non-conformances you had, for instance, in a month, but this is what it truly cost. And that cost might be startling.
And typically in companies, even if they're doing this, very often it's more of kind of a paper system. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right. What happens with a lot of our customers is they come to us from a quality system that's paper-based. It's Excel spreadsheets, it's manual log files, or it might be a bunch of separate access databases, and they want to consolidate all of that activity into one place. They want to eliminate redundant data entry because most of them have an ERP system where their jobs and their customers and their POs reside. They don't want to have to retype all that information in again. And they're blowing their brains out trying to stay compliant with the ISO standard or AS9100 or other quality standards using a manual system. So we allow all that activity throughout our 19 modules to integrate all into one place. You've got one central place to enter the data, and then instantly you have metrics, you have reports, you have trending, and you have data integrated from your ERP system. So by offering that type of environment, suddenly customers can measure and set benchmarks as to how much they're spending on quality every month and how they want to improve. And over the course of the year, you can run a cost of quality trend graph for an entire year that proves that you've saved $50, $60, $100, $150,000 a year by managing your quality in a central position.
Now, Dean, let me ask you this. We have a webinar again. I want to remind everyone out there, Dirk brought it up, next Wednesday, September 26th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and you can sign up for that right below here. Now, Dean, on the webinar, your team is going to be chatting with Dirk, and we're going to be presenting some information on Unipoint. Can you briefly tell us about the different modules that you have and what they're intended to do, and why you assembled those modules and picked those modules to be the ones that you would present to your audience, to your customers?
Yes, absolutely. Our core quality system is made up of modules that we feel apply to every manufacturer and every distributor in the world. They are the ability to manage your non-conformances, all your corrective preventative actions, a complete document control module, a tooling and equipment module where you do maintenance, repair, and calibration on all your inspection tools. We offer a request module, a trending module, a graphical key indicators dashboard module. That's our core system, and again, I think that applies to every type of manufacturer and distributor, regardless of whether they care about being compliant to a quality standard like ISO. And then we're going to show our add-on modules, which are inspection, auditing, health and safety, education and training, supplier management, validation. And these modules take our core system and transform it to a completely compliant environment. So whether you're AS9100 for aerospace or you're certified to an automotive standard, you're going to be completely compliant to those standards just by using the product. And you'll be able to eliminate all of that redundant data.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so we're going to learn more about this on
Wednesday, the 26th of September at, again, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can register. I believe we have a registration link right below the page.
Right below the page.
We're going to be chatting with the Unipoint team. Dirk's going to be moderating, and so check that one out. If you have some time on Wednesday, be sure to register for that and come aboard and check out that website.
Yeah, any of you who are still involved in a paper system and want to join the 21st century, you might want to look at this. Okay, Dean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thanks, Dean. See you Wednesday.
Okay.
Great job. All right. Thanks, Dirk. Thanks, Dean. We'll look forward to that again middle of next week. Okay. Well, that's our show for the week. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank Dr. Lazaro Lopez of Wheeling High School and, of course, Dean Antonakis of Unipoint for joining us on the show. First time we had two guests on the show, Dirk. It was two Skypes.
Yes, two Skypes. That was interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. We're going to be doing more of that as we go forward. A lot of folks are queuing up to be on our show. So look forward to more guests coming up later in the year. So that's our show. Again, have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.